Good morning. Good to see everyone. My name's Dr. Marion McCollum. I'm a psychologist in private practice, and I have a small service that I offer to the community called Courage to Age, which is wellness education about physical, spiritual, and mental wellness. And I do counseling with elders as well. So I'm glad to be here today. And okay, and I got a question for you now. Without looking at any papers that you have, who can remember my name? Okay, how did you remember it? How'd you remember it? Because you said it to yourself, you repeated it to yourself, and you remembered it. Someone else over here, how did you remember it? You wrote it down. Good memory strategy. Anyone else do something different to remember my name? Yes. You read my name? You read my name? You can read it from way back there. That's pretty amazing. Okay. So writing it down, reading it, saying it to yourself, all good memory strategies. What would be another way you could remember? Anybody ever watch The Music Man years ago? That musical, you all are probably too young. A few people in the audience probably know. There's a character in there called Marion the Librarian. And that's, I tell people that sometimes, and they remember my name that way, because if you haven't seen The Music Man, go see it sometime or rent it. What's another way you could remember it? Marion McCollum. M&Ms. Think about, and it's right before lunch, okay? That would be a good way to remember. Okay, so you've already on to some of the brain strategies that we're going to talk about. You know that this conference is in honor of our Greensboro reading of One City, One Book. How many have read the book, The Pleasure Was Mine? Oh, a lot of you. That's great. If you haven't, it's a wonderful book. I'm on the committee with through the library, and so I really recommend to you a lot of the fun programs that we're having throughout the community related to this book, including a drama of the book at the Historical Museum in a couple of weeks, and some great other events, field trips, and so for those of you who haven't read the book, I just want to use this as a little bit. It's a story about a woman who gets Alzheimer's, and it's told from the point of view of her husband. And in the beginning of the story, she wanders to a neighbor's house in the middle of the night, and he doesn't realize she's gone until he gets a phone call from the neighbor. So I'm just going to give you a flavor for the book, help us talk about memory. On a 19-degree December night, Irene had walked barefoot down to Mildred's in her nightgown. She told her it was to get some eggs to make a birthday cake. "It's nobody's birthday," I said as I drove Irene back home. This was when I believed that as long as I kept the facts in front of her, she had a frightening chance. "It feels like somebody's birthday," she said, looking out the van window. "Even if it were somebody's birthday," I said, "even if it wasn't in the middle of the night, we have 2 whole cartons of eggs in the refrigerator." I knew because I'd been doing the cooking for a while, and what I cooked was eggs, so I made sure we had plenty on hand. "Whose residence is this?" she asked as I turned into our drive. I thought she was pulling my leg the way she used to, but when I looked at her face pale and blank in the street light, I saw she didn't know where she was. "I want to go home," she said, sounding lost like a child. "We are home," I said. This little dwelling?" she asked, looking toward the house. And it goes on. So you can see that Irene had begun to lose her memory. She couldn't remember the words for eggs. She couldn't remember where she lived. And that's pretty distressing. And I think a lot of the programs that we're having for One City, One Book are about Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is kind of like the new cancer. Everybody's afraid of it. and with good reason, because it's a pretty debilitating disease of the mind. And so people are pretty motivated to try to keep their memory. This is a pretty full auditorium, and we've got several other programs going on at 11 o'clock. There's a lot of interest in this whole issue of brain fitness. So we're going to talk a little bit about memory and cognition, but also about the psychological growth that's possible in the later years when our brain is kept healthy. Our minds, this is the interesting new information we have, is that our minds continue to grow and evolve in response to changes in the brain. So up until fairly recently, old age was seen as a disease where the mind and the body fell apart like a worn-out car. And most of the studies, most of the social service efforts were studied on the problems of aging, the problems of old age. And only recently have we really begun to see the potential of this phase of life, that it's not just problem-ridden, it's not just decline and disability and deterioration, all those D words, death. But it's it's potential. A lot newer studies now are showing that we can maintain and build and remodel our brains for more effective and creative tasks. Okay, so it's you're living in an exciting time when we understand more about the brain and its potential rather than assuming that you get to a certain age and it just declines and that's it, and life is over. So certain brain functions do decline with normal aging. And I know some of your sessions here are differentiating between what's normal aging and what's disease. Alzheimer's is not normal aging. The kinds of things I just read to you about Irene forgetting about eggs, forgetting her house, not knowing where she was, that's not normal aging. But certain brain functions do decline with normal aging. The speed of solving problems. Older people can't solve them. They can solve them, but not quite as quickly as younger people. Reaction time. We know that with driving, don't we? Reaction time is slower. And some efficiency of the short-term memory storage. So older brains can pull out memory from the longer past, distant past, but have a little bit less efficiency in pulling out that short-term memory. Okay, so the other thing that there are other things that do weaken the brain's structure, and that's disease, stress, alcohol and drug use, smoking, inactivity, malnutrition, and isolation. Okay, those all contribute to weakening of the brain. I'll say those again. Disease, any kind of diseases, so heart disease, diabetes, stress, alcohol and drug use, smoking. Inactivity, we're going to talk a little bit more about activity, malnutrition, and isolation. It's one of our concerns for many of our elders that are living alone and not living on sufficient income, that they're not being well nourished. We know there are great statistics about, I think about a quarter of the elders that live alone are malnourished, and that can affect brain function. So we used to think, a few people here maybe remember that, the young people probably don't, but we used to think that the neurons of the brain would not regenerate, that they just stopped regenerating after a certain age, that the brain cells died and were not replaced. How many of you have heard that before? I wonder if that's still, yeah. You still think that's true? Okay, it's not true it's not true, but that was what we used to think. And I think that's partly what contributed to some of our stereotypes about aging, that people, become senile and can't do much because we thought, well, their brains have stopped, so doesn't that make sense? But now we know that after age 50 and up until, at least the research shows, up through 70s and probably way beyond that, new dendrites are generated. And those are the little squiggly things, you know, that go off the brain cells. So new dendrites are generated, and synapses between the neurons are enhanced. In other words, they grow. And as the brain becomes what they call more plastic, more able to be modeled and remodeled. And what does that? It does that as a result of learning. So the brain grows and rewires itself in response to stimulation and learning. Doesn't just happen. In response to stimulation and learning. We didn't really know this about the human brain until 1998. That's not very long ago, just 10 years ago. We knew it in the 60s about rats. Okay, they'd been able to show that rats' brains could regenerate, but we didn't know that about the human brain until fairly recently. There's some fascinating studies. For example, have you heard the study about the London cab drivers? Who's been to London? Okay, a few people. You ever take a taxi in London? The streets are very convoluted, and they're all, they've been those streets back since the Middle Ages, you know, and they're kind of crazy. So the taxi drivers have their work cut out for them to try to find their way in the streets of London. And they've done studies, autopsies obviously, of the brains of taxi drivers, London taxi drivers, and found that the hippocampus, that's part of the frontal cortex of the brain, the hippocampus of London taxi drivers are enlarged. And that's the part of the brain that's used for navigating in three-dimensional space. So the driver's experience of navigating these complex streets of London exercised that part of the brain, and it grew. I think that's fascinating. They've also shown that in musicians, how many musicians we got here? All right. Now your brains are going to perk up. Okay, so when they've studied the brains of musicians, they found that the part of the brain that's associated with discrimination of tone and pitch are enlarged, have increased functioning, because they've been used a lot. So the brain is like a muscle, and you use it, it becomes stronger, and let it idle, and it becomes flabby. Here's an interesting statistic. The fastest growing number of graduate students is over 50. How many graduate students? How many students we have here over 50 that are actually at Guilford Tech taking classes? Wonderful. Okay, so you're in the fastest growing group of students. And the reason that is because we now know that not only we don't need to stop learning, but we shouldn't stop learning, because that's going to continue to enhance the brain. So older students might be slow. Remember we said they might be a little slower to recall and process new information, but they can recall previously acquired information, and they can integrate new material into context. Reasoning and problem-solving parts of the brain do not decline with age. Now, they might with some of the other things I told you about, right? Remember disease, malnutrition, stress, alcohol and drugs, but not with normal aging. I am 60, and I took a course last semester at UNCG, and I did fine with the material. I had a terrible time with the parking deck and all those tokens that I had to buy and put in the machines. And I had a terrible time with the technology because everything was, you had to bring your little, what do you call those things? Yeah. See, you can tell my age. Bring those little flash drives to get all your notes, and that was just a kind of a foreign world to me from when I was in graduate school. But as far as the learning, what was put up on the on the PowerPoint and remembering it and being able to write papers and take tests, I could do fine. I couldn't do the parking garage or the technology very well. So, all right. One thing that improves with age is your vocabulary. All right? So, I'm going to give you a new vocabulary word. You ready? We're going to learn one. It's the amygdala. And you're supposed to learn the word and a new word every day and learn its spelling, its origin, and its meaning. So I'm going to give you all of that for amygdala. It's spelled and I don't have PowerPoint, right? Because I don't do technology too well, but Amygdala. It's the Greek word for almond. And it's part of your brain. You actually have two of them. They call the amygdalae, and they're part of your limbic system, which is the emotional center of the brain. You all learned about the brain in school? I see some of the students looking at me like, okay, I didn't know how much was taught. But it's real important these days because most of the research we're doing about health has to do with your brain. So you need to know those parts of the brain. So the amygdala is part of that limbic system, which is the emotional center of the brain. So the amygdala is the center for very intense emotions, anger, fear, hatred. Even when I say those words and raise my voice, they're registering in your amygdala or your amygdalae, your two amygdala. That's the part of your prefrontal cortex that does actually decrease some with age. Now, it's not the reasoning and problem-solving part, but there is some shrinking of the prefrontal cortex, including that amygdala. So, that could be a good thing. Anybody figure that out? How could that be a good thing? Yes? You don't get as mad as easily. Absolutely. See, we said those were the centers for fear, anger, hatred. So one of the good things that happens with older brains is that older people experience less intense emotions. So they can be calmer in the face of life's adversities and crises. They have more emotional stability. And that's if nothing else is wrong. You know, that might not be true if you have Alzheimer's, okay? We're talking about normal aging. One of my models for positive aging is Jimmy Carter, former president. And some people say that he's done more good for the world in his retirement than he ever did as president. You know what he did? You know what he goes out and does? He builds houses, yeah.
He does a lot of relations, like going over to, what do you call that?
Peacekeeping. He's really one of our prime peacemakers. And can you see how that changes in the brain could allow him to be better at that? I don't know how old he is now. Does anybody know? 80s maybe? Yeah. So he's more effective. One of the other neat things that happens to the brain is that you can experience, the older brain can experience positive and negative emotions at the same time. In other words, they can hold that. The young people here sometimes see things, I either hate her or I love her, right? Or it's really horrible or it's fabulous. And older brains can hold both those emotions together and see and hold them together. And there's nothing wrong or right about that. That's just the way it is. And so what that allows older people to do is to have more empathy, to be able to see the situation from someone else's point of view, because they can hold both those things at the same time. So those are the positive psychological growth experience that are possible because of the brain changes in the older years. Okay, who can spell amygdala? Got it, back there, tell me. Bravo. How do you remember how to spell it? Did you, pardon? Did you write it down? And I spelled it for you, but you wrote it down. Okay. All right. That's a hint. Amygdala, and you wrote it down. All right. Okay. Here's another encouraging brain change. It's called, oh golly, we're running out of time. I gotta do this fast. Okay, bilateral synchrony. You can use both hemispheres of the brain more equally when you're older. Isn't that? And that allows for greater creativity and insight. Okay, I'm going to skip the story because we're running out of time. But it's a cute, I'll recommend a book to you called The Mature Mind by Gene Cohen. He's a psychiatrist and a medical doctor, and he has a website, and he has a wonderful story in here that I was going to read to you about the creative insight that can come with the mature brain and that bilateral synchrony, but I think I'm running out of time. Okay, so, but more creativity can happen. The older your brain gets, the more creative. Isn't that exciting? Different kinds of creativity. And he has also written another book called The Creative Age, if you're interested in the issue of creativity that you might enjoy. Okay, so just as we go to the gym to keep our, this is the part you came for anyway, and I got to get to that, right? How do you do it? Okay, I'm getting there. Just as you go to the gym to keep fit, our brains need a mental workout to release and expand their mental potential. Okay, here's some of the things that our brains need. 1, learn something new. Learn something new. New experiences and novelty generate new synapses. So it's not that hard. A class, a book club, a writing group, an art program, a stimulating job or a volunteer job. Learn a new language. That's one of the things that they're really pushing as far as brain development is learn a new language. It could be a computer language, or it could be how to use the token machine in the parking garage at UNCG, you know? But learning a new language is one of the helpful things. Learn to identify all the birds that you see in your backyard. Challenge yourself to learn something new. It's the learning, but it's also the newness that really enhances those synapses. Okay. And choose something that you have to work at. Work up a mental sweat. So it can't be something that just comes totally easily to you. Here's something interesting for all these older students that are here. Higher education is a protective factor against cognitive decline and may protect against Alzheimer's. Okay? So keep going to school, and it may help your brain from declining and may prevent Alzheimer's. Okay, learn something new first. Second, physical exercise. You guys know this, but it's just a reminder. Aerobic exercise increases oxygen to the brain, nourishes the brain cells, and allows them to function more effectively. It improves memory, concentration, abstract reasoning, and here it is, delays the onset of Alzheimer's. It actually promotes new neurons in that hippocampus, the part that the London cab drivers got bigger, promotes new neurons in that part of the brain that control memory and learning. You're not going to learn very well if your brain doesn't have the oxygen it needs. Okay, I was going to do a little exercise with you. Want to do one? Can you stand up where you are? All right, this will be fun. Okay, take your left hand and grab your right earlobe so that your fingernail faces towards me. Take your right arm and do the other thing. Grab your left earlobe. Okay, now those are your acupressure points, and you're going to squat down a little ways, and as you go, you're going to breathe in through your nose, and then out through your mouth. Again, in through your nose, out through your mouth. One more time. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Bravo! All right. This is from Super Brain Yoga. And Super Brain, listen, this is real stuff. Super Brain Yoga's been developed by a Yale neurologist. All right? So we're doing it right here. This Yale neurologist has taken some of these exercises and studied them and shows how they really, you're stimulating the acupuncture points on your earlobes, and you are putting gas in your brain's tank with that inhale and the exhale. They suggest you do that 10 times a day, 10 times together. We only did it 3. You can handle that, right? That's not that hard. That's from Super Brain Yoga. If you feel silly sitting around holding your earlobes, just take deep breaths. Just do deep breaths. And that'll help in any situation. Okay, number 3, pick challenging leisure activities. Dancing, one of the best things to do. Learn a language and dance. Dance with the stars. Learn a musical instrument, travel, read, design a garden, do puzzles, do Sudoku, and maybe do some computer games. But the jury is still out as to whether those computer games that our young people like really do enhance the brain function. They teach you how to work the games better, but we're not sure that they really grow your brain in the same way that some of these other things do. It may be that we figure that out at some point, but we don't know for sure. So there are a lot of brain fitness computer games that are being marketed. Maybe you've seen some of them. They're everywhere now. They do show that people learn to do that game better, and their memory is enhanced for that particular game, but we're not positive about the functions. Yes? Yes, brain age. How do you like it?
It's good. Very
Math-oriented. Yeah. Well, that's good. I have in a class that I taught, a woman said her father was 97 and still going to ball games and having a great life, and he does long division every day by hand. But try the computer version, whatever. All right. There are a lot of games out there, and there's some AARP. Some of the look through Consumer Reports and make sure there's something with some research. Okay, number 4, achieve mastery over something. In other words, learn to do something really well, so you feel great about it, excited about it. You feel like, man, I got that. And what that does, psychologists call it self-efficacy. It gives you a sense of self-efficacy, but it also boosts your immune system because of that positive emotion. When you get fired up about something you're passionate about and you can do really well, it boosts your immune system, boosts your brain function and the efficiency. So do something fun, that's great, and do it well. Number 5, establish strong social networks. Social relationships decrease stress, the risk of stroke, and resulting brain damage. So go hang out with your friends, and as you get older, you have to find new ways to do that because you lose people. So you have to continue to maintain those relationships. Number 6, eat a heart-healthy diet. So there's a huge link that they found now between heart health and brain health. So everything that you read about that heart-healthy diet works for your brain too. Okay, I'll recommend a couple of resources to you. One is Andrew Weil. He writes in a lot of magazines. He wrote a book called Healthy Aging, and he talks about the anti-inflammatory diet, which is a good one. There's another good author that I met, Stephen Masley, and he wrote a book called 10 Years Younger. You remember that one, right? Don't even remember his name. Just Google 10 Years Younger. And he has something on his website that you can go to, and find his Sweet 16 Vitality Foods, okay, the foods that you should eat to help your brain. As a clue, I'll just give you a few. If I'd had time, I was going to read them to you, but we're running low. So water, I see a lot of water bottles here. That's good. Essential. Your antioxidants, your omega-3s, you know, that's that salmon and the flax seed and flaxseed oil. Any kind of really colorful fruit and vegetables. So go check out the cafeteria today. See if they have any blueberries or strawberries or bright orange peppers, something like that. Colorful fruits, fish oil, we hear that a lot. Stuff's gross. But anyway, flax, soy products. Being overweight or having high cholesterol increases the risk of Alzheimer's. Got that? Okay, number 7, get proper rest and sleep. We know that, but that's going to help your brain. Just say that to yourself when you're tempted to stay up and watch one more TV show before you go to bed. And number 8, handle stress. Long-term chronic stress is linked to memory decline. Remember in the beginning I gave you that list of things that do result in brain decline, and one of them is long-term chronic stress. So you know some of those things. Just a few reminders. Eat, sleep, and be merry. Balance your work and your leisure. Students are probably better at that than we older students, the young students. They do that better, I think. Use humor. Gain some perspective on life. Quiet your mind with prayer, meditation, listening to music, reading. Really consciously manage your stress. Everybody's stressed these days. And of course, if all those things else fails, there's counseling. So who remembers where I work? Courage to Age is my little business, but I also have a private practice. Where is that? I don't think it's written down. So, all right, I only said it one time, and so it's the Center for Psychotherapy, and it's in downtown Greensboro on Elm Street. And if you would like, I have a few. I didn't bring enough for this crowd, but I have a few brochures here with my contact information. If anybody wants to contact about a program about wellness or counseling services, they're here, and I'll leave them maybe down here. Okay, so that's what I deal with all day long in my work, is people that are stressed and maybe have issues that are contributing to that stress in addition to just everyday life. Okay, so memory, real quickly. Without memory, our very identity disappears, right? That's why we're so scared about Alzheimer's. Memory is affected by drug side effects, anxiety, and depression. Again, come get counseling if you have some anxiety, depression. There's normal forgetting, and then there's dementia. And just real quickly, here's a good way to remember that. If you forget what you went to look for in the refrigerator, that's normal forgetting. If you forget what a refrigerator is for, that might be dementia. Okay? So, just a little quick way. If you want some more tips, we've talked about a few tips for better memory. If you want some more, there's a good website through the Harvard Medical School, and they have 10 research-proven tips for a better memory. Okay? One of them is repeat, which is somebody did earlier. Another one is link it with something that's already known, like Madam the Librarian. I remember that character in the movie. Another one is visualize what needs to be remembered. So, if you need to remember to buy bread at the store, what do? Yeah, picture it. And then there's the whole science of mnemonics, which is the study of memory and how to remember it. So I'll teach you one real quick. A way to remember the colors of the rainbow. Can anybody just say the colors of the rainbow? G. Biv. You got him. Roy G. Biv. All right. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. All right. So you know those little tricks, and use them. Probably the most important message of the day is stay curious, keep learning, stay involved, stay engaged with other people, take care of your body, breathe. All right. Good to be with you. Thanks for being here, and keep your brain fit, and come get a brochure if you'd like some more information.